What's up, Cougar Nation? Welcome again aboard the Hype Train podcast. I'm your host, Joe Wheat. That's at Joe Wheat27 on Twitter. As always, with my boys, Hunter Miller and Trevor Levitt. And brethren, Hunter's been cooking some stuff up because with all the imaging we got going on now, people are going to start thinking we're good at this.
It is officially an actual media production. We have gone are the days of the rinky-dink free StreamYard broadcasts that we then just put on YouTube. We are live on YouTube. We actually have official looking banners, backdrops, a little intro video. Some say the hype train is sold out, but
yeah, all of which are paid for and presented by Wilner O'Reilly Immigration Law, as always. Please feel free. We're live tonight, so please feel free. Join us in the chat. I'm trying to think of a good name for the Hype Train chat. I was thinking about calling it the Tender, which I learned tonight was the car right behind the engine, which I feel like is apt. So join us in the Tender. We'll find a better name for it as we go, but that's my working title for it. College football playoff rankings came out about an hour ago, and boy, are we back, because I am so excited to yell into a microphone about how BYU is being disrespected by the College Football Playoff Committee, because that's our roots, right? Like that's where we really belong, is just being furious about this.
The worst part is we saw it coming, right? Like in the chat was, oh, here comes an 11th ranking. And then it happened, and yet still mad about it. Like, we knew what was going to happen. We had days to prepare for it. In the moments leading up, we knew exactly what was going to happen, and yet none of that did anything to soften the blow of this sucks. BYU's undervalued. They're underranked. They're not getting the respect they deserve. And it's bonkers. Like, even the tweets coming out after, where like Nicole Arbach is like, oh, at least the committee has the sense to do the undefeated teams, then the 1-loss teams, and then the 2-loss teams in that order, except for BYU. And it makes no sense. It's disgusting.
What's so infuriating about it, like, I was fine, like the 11th ranking, okay, like fine, BYU has more games to play, they got a chance to move up. What was so infuriating about it was when they talked about, like, when they were talking about what's the intrigue of these rankings, they talked about, what was it, 7 through 10, and they said, we already know the teams who are going to be there. And it was just like a foregone conclusion that BYU wasn't in the same tier as those 7 to 10 teams. And I think that's where I got a little pissed off, because I'm going to try something here. I'm going to share my screen, if it will let me.
Now we're getting really fancy. It's week 1 in this new setup, and Joe is trying to share screens.
Joe's calling a flea flicker on the opening play of the game. He's taking a deep shot.
Let me know if we can even see this. So this is my blind resume of the 4 teams that they said were 7 through 10, and another team that is unknown. What sticks out to you about these teams' resumes? Which one do you think is BYU? And we'll go from there. What are your guys' takeaways from this?
I mean, right now I'm getting the circle of death.
Well, that's too bad. I spoke too soon. We're not good at this, clearly. So I'll just read off some of the stuff. So we got team A.
There we go. We're live.
Let's go.
Holy smokes.
So we got teams A through E, and we're measuring them based on strength of record, strength of schedule, FEI, which is probably the premier.
Joe's internet is buns. That is correct.
Appreciate that, Cougs. You're 100% correct. We have FEI, which is, in my opinion, the premier predictive ranking we have. We have each team's best win, worst loss, and then the FEI average ranking of all of those teams' wins. Okay.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay.
For the podcast audience, you're just join us on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're trying to grow the platform here. So we got team A we got strength of record 6'7", 5'11", 9. Team A has the best win. The third worst loss. Again, more just kick it to you guys. What stands out here to you?
I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark and say Team E is Alabama.
It is Alabama.
Hey,
come on. Any team that lost to Florida State should automatically be kicked out. I don't care that it was week 1. I don't care the circumstances. You lost to Florida State, who's, speaking of buns, the only thing more buns than Joe's Wi-Fi is Florida State.
So here's the kind of takeaway for the podcast audience. Alabama's strength of record is 9. Their strength of schedule is 8th, which is really good. Their FEI is 8th, which is good. Their best win is over the 8th ranked power rated team. Their worst loss is to Florida State, who's the 25th power rated team, who is much worse than that in terms of like what's actually happened on the field. And the average FEI, the average team that they've beaten, has a ranking of 38. Team D, let's go backwards on this.
I mean, I feel like I know B is BYU.
You'd actually be incorrect.
Really?
Team B is not BYU.
That surprises me. So then C is BYU.
Is Team B Notre Dame?
It is not. What is it?
Is Team B Notre Dame?
Team B is Oregon.
Oh, I guess their loss is Indiana. So that would.
Oregon has strength of record of 7, strength of schedule of 34, FEI of 3. Best win is the 16th ranked team. Worst loss is the number 1 team, and their average ranking of their wins is 65.3. Not great. Team C.
Can we just say that Oregon still like getting credit for beating Penn State when Penn State is absolutely awful? Like that's their one thing that they can really hang their hat on to date is we beat Penn State, and yet that's the most that's a worse win than I feel like most of BYU's wins.
So
like that's a less impressive win than BYU beating TCU this weekend.
So look, this is bad podcasting, so I'm just going to call an audible and just expose whose rankings are whose. So that, Hunter, that was my biggest takeaway from all this. So BYU right now has of this group of 5 teams, so BYU, Oregon, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, and Alabama, they have the second highest strength of record, which is 6th. They have the third highest strength of schedule, 25th. They do have the lowest FEI, but just slightly behind. Theirs is 15, Ole Miss is 13, so just behind them. They have the best win. Utah is ranked 5th in FEI. The worst loss, BYU, I think, has the 3rd worst loss to Texas Tech, with Alabama's being the worst to Florida State. And then the average FEI of their wins, BYU, again, is 3rd in this group, with an average FEI win ranking of around 49.
My takeaway from this is FEI is I don't like it.
Well, it's I hear you.
Florida State is not 25. Also, Texas Tech is lower than Utah.
So that's where we get into like predictive versus resume rankings. Florida State is like the 72nd resume in the country. So that's more what we would expect in terms of like the reason they're so high is because they're very talented. But again, I agree predictive rankings are flawed, but it's the best data we got. The thing that's so fresh. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say my second takeaway is that we severely underestimate how impressive BYU's win over Utah was.
And
like knowing now who is who, takeaway, and this is something I felt over the last couple of weeks, say something nice about your rival. BYU beating Utah this year was maybe the most impressive win BYU has had this decade.
Probably longer. Like it.
Yeah.
It might, like, in terms of FEI, like in terms of team strength, whatever you want to call it, it might be BYU's most impressive win since Miami in 1990.
In the last 30 years, 35 years.
Like that win is so good, but they're not going to get any credit for it because Utah has 2 losses, and also Utah is kind of Utah. But in terms of like the frustrating thing about, to your point, Hunter, the frustrating thing about these rankings is it's clear that the committee is not reevaluating teams' resumes every single week. They're doing the exact same thing that the AP voters do, where they just look at, okay, what was my poll last week? I'm going to move teams up or down based on who won or lost. And then that's the extent that I'm going to do this. The thing I like about strength of record, this metric, and what I was hoping the committee would use this year, is that each week strength of record reevaluates everything that happened. So like at the time, BYU's win over ECU wasn't that impressive. ECU just keeps winning. They're 7-3 now, first place in the American. And there's an outside chance that like ECU can make the playoff.
Is there a single BYU win that has aged poorly?
Colorado?
Like even Stanford, I guess, yeah, Colorado's the one. Good call.
That's it.
But I mean, even Stanford looks better than I think people expected Stanford to be at the time of that win. ECU's better. I think, Arizona has been on a tear since that game. Like,
so
there's
that Arizona
aside
win,
from Colorado,
great win.
Yeah, aside from that Colorado win, which credit where credit's due, that is a win that looks bad. There's not a single team that BYU has beaten that has gone on to be worse than what we thought in that moment. They've all gone on to be a more impressive victory. Yeah, I mean, Dylan points out in the chat, even West Virginia has looked better than we thought West Virginia was in that moment. We thought West Virginia was going to be a cakewalk for everyone. They go on, they pull off some upsets. They've looked competitive against teams that you would have expected them to get blown out by. So they've all aged gracefully, with the exception of Colorado.
So I'm trying to go through rack through my brain and figure out how is BYU not in the same tier as these? Because each week BYU's resume looks better. Last week, their ranking of 12th made sense because they were 11th in strength of record. Again, you evaluate the resume, another week of data. BYU jumps back up to 6 because they have some awesome wins. And that win over TCU on Saturday was awesome. TCU was a top 30 team in FEI before that game started. That loss to BYU knocked them all the way down to 45th. That's how bad BYU beat TCU. So, but I'm looking through it, in past years, it's been, BYU has a great record, but they have a bad strength of schedule. How is BYU's strength of schedule not up to par with some of these other schools? Ole Miss hasn't beaten a soul. I mean, they have the Oklahoma win. Other than that, not really a ton. Notre Dame definitely hasn't beaten anybody. Oregon, outside that win over Iowa, hasn't beaten anybody. Their average ranking is 70, close to 70th in the country. Their strength of schedule is 34th, well behind BYU, and they have the same record. So why on earth is Oregon a lock for a home game in the playoff and BYU's outside looking in? How is that?
The logo. It's the logo.
Have you seen their Nike collabs?
It's not their best, certainly not their best win. Maybe it's that they have a quality loss to Indiana, but in all of these areas, BYU is ahead of Oregon, except for FEI, except for these predictive rankings, which take into account past year's performance and recruiting. It's why we should never use FEI to determine who should get into the playoff and not, as it takes way more into account than just what's happened on the field this year. Based on what has happened on the field this year, BYU should 100% be ahead of a team like Oregon. And they're not. They're 5 spots behind.
Honest question. Where would the ECU win for BYU rank amongst Notre Dame's victories?
All right, let's look, shall we?
I think clearly number 1 is USC. And then dare I say that the BYU's win over ECU would be the second most impressive win that Notre Dame has.
Yeah, because right now their second best win is what? Pitt, probably?
Pitt, yeah, 7-3 Pitt or 7-3 ECU.
Yeah,
both of them were on the road. I don't know. Pitt is that great?
I think so. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is ECU's 44th. That's Pitt.
Third,
it's
fourth,
same game.
So And again, but because it happened in September, it magically doesn't count. Just like Alabama's loss to Florida State does not count. Just like Miami's loss to Notre Dame's loss to Miami does not count. Like the argument about like
Notre Dame's other loss.
Well, it's like the argument I keep seeing on social media that's dominating the nation right now is like, well, who should get in, Miami or Notre Dame? The answer is neither at this stage because it should be BYU. Based on all the metrics that I'm looking at, except for these dumb predictive metrics, which you, Hunter, have already agreed are bogus to some respect, it should be BYU ahead of both teams. They have a better record. They have a tougher strength of schedule. They're actually on track to win their conference, which Miami is like in 6th place right now in the ACC. Good Lord. 6th place in the ACC.
The most frustrating thing of all of this to me is that we've done this song and dance before. We did this same song and dance a season ago. BYU went on to absolutely throttle Colorado in the bowl game. And we ended that with every national media person agreeing, hey, we should have looked at BYU as a real playoff team more seriously. We should have taken them seriously. They probably deserved a lot longer look, a much deeper conversation. And at the end of the day, BYU probably got snubbed from the playoff. Then, magically, during the month of August, all of that faded from memory, and we're doing the exact same thing again. We're having the exact same conversation again, where it's saying, hey, BYU is being undervalued, underranked. They deserve a much higher ranking and a much more serious look at the college football playoff based off of what they have done this year versus what these other teams have done. And we're going to get to the same point and the same conclusion where we're going to end the year. And if BYU ends up getting snubbed from an at-large bid, then we're going to be having this exact same conversation that we had in the conclusion of 2024. So how many years does it take for BYU to be the snub of the college football playoff before they actually get the respect that they deserve and the respect that has been earned on the field of play? That's the most frustrating part of it for me. Now, the good news is that BYU still controls their own destiny. All of this is absolutely meaningless. You can crumple it up and throw it away and disregard every metric, ranking, hypothetical, betting line, predictive ranking, all of it. If BYU just takes care of business week in and week out from here until mid-December. And ultimately, as a fan, like that's what I have to fall back on. That's what I have to silence all the frustrations and the annoyances that is the college football playoff committee and these rankings, is that if BYU just goes into Cincinnati this Saturday and takes care of business, and they come back to Provo and they play senior night against UCF and they win that, and let's just say, for the sake of the argument, they go into Dallas and they pull off the upset against Texas Tech, then none of this matters. None of these rankings, none of these behind closed doors playoff committee discussions with the worst athletic director in the room, it's all meaningless because BYU will have earned a spot on the field, and there's nothing that any SEC homer or Notre Dame burner account on Twitter can say to take that away from BYU.
It just the thing that bugs me, and obviously this is what we're getting at, is the fact that, like Keeg was mentioning in the chat, like there's a very realistic scenario where BYU ends the season with 12 wins because they lose the conference championship game, they win their bowl game. The thing that drives me crazy is that the margin of error for BYU is just so razor thin in comparison to everybody else who, for whatever reason, like if BYU won out and lost in the conference championship game, how are they not still a one-loss team? Like, okay, yes, we verified that Texas Tech is as good as everybody thinks they are, and they beat BYU the first time and they beat BYU the second time. But everybody else, BYU beat. BYU beat everybody in the country except for a top 5, maybe top 4 team, depending on how the conference championship games go. And yet we're out. Notre Dame Notre Dame has these 2 quality losses, but can't add to it anything of worth. And yet they have this endless supply of like forgiveness from the committee for no other reason than, Joe, as you mentioned, their gold lids. Like, it's not, they haven't done anything. They haven't beaten anybody that's worth anything.
It's
like BYU just has to go undefeated to get into the college football playoff, but you've got Texas that's got 3 losses and they're still in consideration. Like, why?
Yeah, Herbie's caping for them making it as a 3-loss team. But like, Hunter, I totally hear your argument about, BYU controls its own destiny. They don't need to rely on these rankings. That's great. The problem is that Texas Tech is really freaking good, and that BYU can take care of business, go 11-1, and lose to Texas Tech again, because again, they're a top 5 team. Like, if you swapped out the logos, like, Texas Tech is ranked number 5 in the country, but I don't think anyone respects Texas Tech. Like, if BYU loses to Texas Tech again, it's still in their head, well, it's just Texas Tech. It doesn't matter like what the ranking is by their name. If you swap the Ohio State logo on that helmet, it would be viewed differently. Like, people still don't take Texas Tech seriously as a national championship contender, which they 100% are.
Correct. And Dylan asked, like, do you feel confident enough in a rematch versus Texas Tech in the conference championship game? Call me crazy. Like, I don't hate BYU's chances there. I think I agree. We talked about it last week on the podcast. I think like BYU was a little in their heads when they traveled to Lubbock a couple of weeks ago. I think it's very difficult to beat a team twice in a season, let alone twice in the span of like a month. I think there's probably a lot that BYU coaches and players could take from that game and learn from. I think their comments after the fact and media availability suggest that. And do I think BYU would be favorited? No. Do I think that it would be a long shot and could be considered an upset victory? Absolutely. But do I like their chances? And I think it's within the realm of possibility. Absolutely, I do. I think that BYU easily could sneak up on a Texas Tech and win that game. Conference championship games are weird. I think it would be much more of a 50-50 split, BYU fans, Texas Tech fans. I think that BYU would come in with maybe a chip on their shoulder, a must-win attitude that Texas Tech maybe wouldn't have, because they, at that point, would be a lock in the college football playoff. That, who knows what could happen. But I like that debate more than I like the debates about metrics and rankings and predictive analytics, because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what matters. Like, BYU going in and handling business is what's going to decide their fate at the end of this season. We can sit here and talk about all the metrics and rankings in the world and how the committee sucks and how they're overvaluing Notre Dame and Oregon and they're undervaluing BYU. But none of that's going to matter. Like, it's the college football playoff committee chair is not going to sit down and listen to this podcast and say, you know what, Joe Wheat has an excellent point. I had not considered the FEI rankings and BYU's strength of record. Like, they're just not, right? So like, we can sit here and discuss it and vent and be angry until the cows come home, but it's not going to change a single thing. What's going to change is if BYU just absolutely goes BTA this weekend in Cincinnati. And, even if they don't win the conference championship game, let's say Texas Tech wins on a last second field goal and wins 27-26. I think that is ultimately what's going to push BYU into the playoff, more so than talking about all these advanced analytics.
And I'm 100% with you. And the good news is that BYU is, that Texas Tech game aside, BYU is playing their best football right now. Like, they ran into an absolute buzzsaw against the number 1 defense in the country. I tip your hat. Bear Bachmeier is getting better every single week. This offense is getting better every single week. The defense is finally starting to look like itself again after getting a lot of these guys back from injury. And then the defensive line is coming up huge and generating pressure. So like we can pivot a little bit to kind of our takeaways from the TCU game, from a national perspective, like clearly it didn't really mean anything because playoff teams are expected to blow out teams like that at home. But it was validating that like this was the BYU we thought we would see all year. This was like
we lost Joe.
In our heart of heart, couldn't quite put it together for 4 quarters.
He's back.
What was that?
You're good. You froze for a second.
Spinning beach ball of death. We had seen flashes of this BYU team and what they could be. We just hadn't seen it for 4 quarters yet. We finally did. And that BYU team that just thrashed TCU is a team that can go into Cincinnati, this is the next biggest game in BYU football history, going to Cincinnati. That's a team that can go in and like not just play a good game against it, like blow the doors off Cincinnati. That team is better.
Yeah, I was very I wouldn't even say surprised, but I was very pleased by the urgency that I feel like the entire team started off with in the game, particularly in the offense. The defense has always started games pretty well for the most part outside of Iowa State. But the fact that they right away got into a rhythm, they went down and scored. Like I believe it was like their first 6 drives ended in points. I mean, that was 7. Yeah, first 7 drives. That was the type of just surgical, methodical, choke the game away because the defense is racking up stops. That, like Joe said, we expected to see. One of the things that I actually really enjoyed. This is our weekly nod to the cut, but Tanner Wall came into the defensive huddle and he was like, guys, like we got to go get the ball back. Like the offense is hot right now. And I can't remember exactly who it was, but it might've been a Connor or somebody, but they're like, we're hot right now, Captain. And that was sweet. Like that was kind of the attitude that, we've been wanting to see. And I think it's an attitude that they're taking into this Cincinnati game. This is a team that like very rarely do teams get to redeem themselves from past failures, especially when those failures were from a year ago. Like, stop me if you've heard this before, but BYU is 9-1. They had a loss that was frustrating earlier in the year, and now they're going on the road to play a team that was a surprise in the conference in a game that has all these conference championship game title hopes riding on the line. If it sounds familiar, we did it last season, and this is an opportunity for this team to right the wrongs of 2024 and finish this season out. We've got the defense to do it. We've got the offense to do it. Not to point fingers, but there was a player in particular at a certain position that struggled at Arizona State last year, and we upgraded at that position going into this game. So this is just one of those times where BYU gets to fix what happened, and I'm looking forward to it.
You're absolutely right, Joe, in saying that BYU and just playoff teams in general are expected to win games like this. I guess I should go back. Playoff teams are expected to win games like this. I think there was a lot of question going into this Saturday night if BYU was expected to win games like this. We talked about it last week, Trevor and I, with Jackson, and we mentioned the fact that historically over the last few years, when BYU loses a game for the first time in a season, it tends to spiral a bit. The wheels kind of start to fall off, and that loss becomes 2 losses. And in extreme situations, those 2 losses become 3 losses. We saw it a season ago. BYU loses to Kansas. They turn around. They lose to Arizona State the following week. They lose to Baylor in 2022. They turn around and they lose the following 2 or 3 games after that. This is a game that BYU needed to win. It's a game that I needed to see BYU win in order to feel confident that this year's team was different than the teams of years past. And not only did they go out and win, they absolutely dominated. Trevor mentioned they scored on their first 7 possessions. It was the first time in, I think, over 30 years that they had done so. The defense absolutely, balled out. They held Texas Tech to their season low in basically every statistical category. There was one quarter in the second where they seemed like they might falter a little bit, but in the second half, they turned it on again and they absolutely dominated the Horned Frogs. Josh Hoover was, not the Josh Hoover that we're used to seeing. And so I think this game was big. I think a lot of national pundits, probably expected BYU to come away with a victory. I don't think anyone expected them to come away with a win in the form and fashion in which they did. But I think just to settle the doubt, settle the questions, settle the uneasiness amongst BYU fans headed into this week was the biggest thing that they could have done. And they did that in a big, big way.
So I wrote about it after the game. 12-year-old Joe prayed for this game. Like, big game against TCU, win or go home situation. And BYU finally beats TCU for what felt like the first time since I was literally 12 years old. So that felt good. But the other reason this felt good is that, like, I remember very, very vividly watching BYU just get destroyed by TCU 2 years ago in Fort Worth. I'm watching from a bathroom at a trailhead in Montana. Like, internet is glitching out worse than it is right now. Shout out Keegan. And I'm watching as BYU is driving down the field down like 37-11 or something along those lines, trying to make an embarrassing loss a little less so. They're on the 15-yard line. It's 4th and 1. They run a QB sneak and they lose a yard. Like, just absolute domination from TC. Like, it was pathetic, frankly. And I just remember thinking in that moment, like, man, we got a long way to go before we're ready to compete at this kind of level. Fast forward, TCU's the one getting just absolutely blown out. They're driving to score one of those garbage time throwaway touchdowns. They face a 3rd and 1 this time from the 17-yard line. They run a QB sneak and they lost a yard. And that was like my second welcome to the Big 12 moment.
And then they false started. And then they illegal shift.
And then they false start.
And then they took a sack.
They get sacked. Like, it was just, it's something I've wanted to see from BYU so long, where for the last, frankly, like even last year, it felt like a team that was obviously very, very good, but they were overperforming their talent level, in my opinion. Like, and to some extent this year, it was a team that had won more games than they were probably expected to, because of culture and the power of friendship and all of those things that we love to talk about. This game, BYU won just because they had better athletes than TCU. And when in your lifetime have you been able to say something like that? BYU was more physical. They were more they certainly looked more talented to me, from my untrained eye. Mentally, they were tougher, and they just put belt to booty. And it was a win that really felt like it was 25 years in the making for me, because I had never seen a BYU team do that to a team that talented. Because TCU is a good football team. Like, again, I already said it, top 30 in the country going into that game, and BYU made them look like the scout team. That's something I haven't seen from a BYU football team in a very, very long time.
Well, and that defense is way better than people give it credit to, and the offense put up 37. I mean, it's like we've
37 in 2 quarters. Like they stopped trying.
Like we've talked about this obviously ad nauseum, but I texted the group chat. You mentioned the athletes, Joe. Just for years, just felt like TCU was moving at light speed and BYU was just stuck in the mud. And here we are, like Parker Kingston is beating TCU's DBs to the sideline and to the pylon. Outside of apparently the fastest 250-pound tight end we've ever seen, like Tanner Walls pulling away from everybody on that pick six. Like, it's amazing to see, one, what a quick turnaround BYU's seen in recruiting just by joining the Big 12. But then to see not only the stars being recruited, like the amount of 4 stars, like the high 3 stars now, Ryder Lyons, once he comes in, like the 5-star guys, once those guys hit the culture, like the team is now no longer good on paper. They're just good. And that's what we're seeing now.
Anything else on TCU?
I want to talk UConn. Pivot sports, because Saturday was just nonstop.
We got a lot
7
to talk
hours.
about, man. Good.
It was like the NFL red zone. 7 hours of commercial-free football. It was 7 hours of absolute anxiety and thrills of BYU athletics. Fortunately, the Final Four were pretty relaxing.
I was going to say, after that basketball game, I felt like we earned that football game, if that makes sense. Yeah. Before we pivot, speaking of, this basketball segment is brought to you by Wilner O'Reilly Immigration Law. Need help with immigration? Wilner O'Reilly has 26 years of experience, a former immigration officer, and a reputation that you can trust. They serve families, professional athletes, entertainers, Fortune 500 companies, and they treat every case with the same level of care. They speak 10 languages, including Spanish, and consultations are free for Hype Train listeners. No strings attached. Go to WilnerO'Reilly.com and mention the Hype Train to connect with a team that gets results. So
7 hours of commercial-filled BYU games is a great way to put it.
Yes. Thanks, Dylan. I take credit for the comeback. Okay. Like, sure, AJ DeBonsa, Rob Wright, Richie Saunders, best BYU team in basketball history, blah, blah, blah. I watched every second of that game until they went down 20. I'm watching the game from California, and all of a sudden the game feed cuts and it switches over to a USC women's basketball game, because I guess that was the local broadcasting rights. And so I missed the entire comeback. And as soon as I thought, okay, like, we're getting killed. I'll enjoy my mom's 60th birthday party because I have priorities. Gosh dang it. And then like I go back inside from the party about 20, 30 minutes later, and I check the score and BYU's down 4. So why don't you guys fill me in on what you saw?
Well,
because I didn't see a darn thing.
The worst part of it all was you were like, oh my gosh, I'm missing this. It's the game switched over to women's basketball. We FaceTimed Joe in. I kid you not, the very second that Joe picks up the FaceTime and I turn the camera to show the TV so he can watch the final few seconds, is the moment that the ball left Rob Wright's hands and went to a UConn defender. So not only did Joe stop watching and BYU makes his comeback, the very second that his eyes took in the colors of a BYU basketball uniform, it was Rob Wright losing the handle and the chances of a comeback slipping through the fingers. So I don't know what that means, but ultimately you should have just stayed at the party.
Very frustrating.
Here's what I will say about the basketball game. I very much enjoy BYU losing a basketball game, and yet the national narrative and the takeaway for every single person that watched the game, aside from Joe, because he didn't watch this part, was that, holy cow, AJ DeBansa is freaking awesome. Like, that was such a beautiful moment. It wasn't BYU started sloppy and couldn't hit a three. It wasn't, the comeback falls short. It wasn't, I think if you asked most people who didn't watch the actual game, who, just on social media, who won this game, they wouldn't be able to tell you one way or another, because it was all just AJ DeBansa highlights. I think most people probably assumed that BYU had won the game, because the number one thing on Bleacher Report, Sports Center, Kevin O'Connell, like The Ringer, all these outlets were talking about was AJ DeBansa is legit. He is a superstar. He's incredible. You have to watch this guy every single time he takes the court. You had, we talked about it last week, who might be in attendance. You had Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, Ray Allen was in attendance. Like, all these great NBA players who have been through Boston were there to see AJ DeBansa. And the narrative coming away from it of just being AJ is awesome. Like, I don't even care about the loss anymore. Losing by 2 in what was essentially a road game to the number 3 team in the country is incredible. I think regardless of how the first half went, and the sum of its parts of that game tells me that BYU is a legit contender, that they are one of the best top 10 teams in the country, that they are the floor is a Sweet 16 appearance. I think the expectations should be at least the Elite 8. All that from a loss, which is something that I don't think as BYU fans we can say very often, if at all, ever. That coming away from a loss, I felt better about this BYU basketball team. I think the narrative surrounding this BYU basketball team is that they are legit, that AJ DeBansa is legit in everyone's eyes, except for Jackson Payne, who dropped them from 6 to 10 in his AP rankings. Everyone can agree, except for Jackson Payne. I'm not going to name names, but Jackson Payne, we all can agree BYU is a legit basketball team with AJ DeBansa at the helm.
It was, to answer your question, Joe, like, what happened? I mean, Hunter nailed it. Like, AJ remembered that he was a freak. Like, he started the first half. What was it, like 1 for 6? Couldn't hit anything. The team started 0 for 10 from 3.
They had him in hell for sure.
Yeah, and something clicked.
I don't think they did. I think he had himself.
Yes,
in hell. Like, I think it was full 100% mental on the part of AJ DeBansa. I think he felt the pressure. The adrenaline was going. I think he was in his own head a little bit because he was just trying to force things a bit too much. He did a great job of getting to the rim, but I think AJ DeBansa had AJ DeBansa in hell, not UConn.
It truly was just, it was a moment probably around like the 12-minute mark when AJ, like, inside his head, I just feel like he was just like, oh, that's right, I'm him. And then everything from there just showed me that if we can get this level of effort for an entire game, because really what changed, like AJ started hitting shots, and I'll go into those in just a second, but the belief in the team changed. Despite everything that had happened, you're down Kennard Davis. Keba goes out injured. But the belief never left, and it was fully started. Like, the catalyst was AJ DeBansa. And when I tell you that dude's bag, there's no bottom to it. Like, this is like Mary Poppins, like, pull whatever you want out of that bag kind of bag. The post moves, the fadeaway. He hit one. I know everybody talks about his kind of fake right left-handed layup, where he spun around the guy, and that was probably his best shot, just given the moment and everything surrounding it. He hit a fadeaway jumper with a 6'7" dude. Like, I felt like it probably should have been a foul. Like, he didn't give him any space to land, but I mean, this guy was as in his face as you could possibly be. And AJ hit that shot like he was alone by himself in the gym. And I think that's what changed. Is it's literally like everyone around him just disappeared, and he just went and he played ball. And it kick-started Richie. It got Rob Wright going. Like, these guys, I thought Dominique Diamande had some incredible minutes and needs more, frankly. But the effort and the belief of this team changed, and they nearly won, and they had a chance. Unfortunately, felt like Rob Wright got a little greedy, obviously trying to split the defense in the manner that he did. I didn't mind like the going for 2 there, but this team is so young, but in that moment, it just felt like all of them glimpsed just an inkling of what they could be. And it was special. It was a loss. Like Hunter said, we lost, but I've never felt better in a loss in my entire life.
It is one of those weird things that, like, they lost, but I still felt better about the team coming out of it than I did going into it. I honestly don't really care about the Rob Wright thing because I'm used to BYU point guards dribbling the ball off their leg in crunch time. Like I've seen that movie before. So ain't nothing new to me. Blaine brings up a good point in the chat that, you know, having a tournament type game in November is something that will definitely pay dividends in conference play. I think that's something that the team was missing last year. Like it took them a few weeks before they learned how to win these types of games. And once they learned it, they never lost them again.
I mean, Blaine mentions this being a tournament type game for BYU. It absolutely was. Your mic is doing the thing again, Joe. There you go. It absolutely was the tournament game. What's insane about this BYU basketball team is they've had 3 games that have legit felt like NCAA tournament vibes to them. One of them didn't even count. And BYU's 2-1 in those games. So you mentioned like finding ways to win. BYU's found ways to win already. They did it against UNC. They did it against Villanova. And then they nearly did it against UConn, who at the end of the day, considering who was out and on the court and was available for both teams, UConn was just a better team. I didn't come away from that game thinking, oh, BYU's the better team. They just, they lost, they lost the game. UConn didn't win it. I came away thinking BYU is really, really good. UConn's just a little bit better. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that Kennard Davis and Keba Cato weren't playing. You basically played that entire game without 2 of your 5 best players. Now, if those 2 play, I think it could be a totally different story where you come away thinking BYU is the better team. But considering who was available, you had, Xavier Staten played 8 minutes. He had played 2 minutes the game before against Delaware, played 1 minute against Villanova, and now he's asked to come in and play some big time minutes. Trevor mentioned Dominique Diamond, who was absolutely incredible. Say what you will about his statistical output, his effort output was 110% every single second he was out there.
He was giving you Trey Stewart minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he's also 6'8".
And Boop was awesome. I think there's one guy who I'm not going to say who it was because I don't want to throw stones at college athletes yet and after a game like that. But there was one player who I came away being upset with and lower on than I have been at any time previously. But aside from that one guy, everyone else, I was like thoroughly impressed with. And I think they showcased the ceiling of how good this team really could be. Now you went toe to toe with a team that was back-to-back national champions, a top 3 team in their place on the biggest stage in college basketball this past weekend. And you nearly came away with a victory. You were one lost, handle away from potentially forcing overtime, if not winning that game. You had the best player on the floor on your side. It was, you mentioned it, Trevor. I don't think I've ever come away from a BYU loss feeling that good.
Well, and the thing is too, is like you look down I'm even thinking for like selection time. I've got 2 images in my head come on March Madness time. One is when they show the resumes, like BYU is going to have some big wins in there, be it, Kansas or Arizona or Wisconsin or whoever the case may be, that's going to help them. But this is a game that hurts you exactly 0%. It because they lost by 2 and AJ looked the way that he looked. This game, albeit a loss, probably helps. Like it's one of those just vaunted quality losses that everybody talks about. The second image is when people are picking their brackets, like when you click and it pulls down all the information on every team. This is going to be one of those games that shows up. It's going to be BYU over Arizona by 8 or BYU over Clemson by 12 or whatever the case may be. But then it's also going to show UConn over BYU by 2 or whatever. And you look at like this UConn team, like Joe Hunter said, is very, very good. But this game truly does nothing but good for you given the outcome of the game.
It's just such a different experience going into every single game as a BYU fan, save maybe, it's up for debate for a couple of them on the schedule this year. but going in every single night and just saying BYU has the best player. That's such a luxury.
Let's dig deeper on this, Hunter. Which team on BYU's schedule has a better player than AJ Debonsa?
I mean, in my opinion, none. I think in the opinions of others, you might say Kansas. Kansas is playing Duke tonight, and they showed Darren Peterson and said projected number 1 pick in the NBA draft. So
he's out with a hamstring injury, right?
He's out tonight with a hamstring injury. He's missed a few games to start the season with a hamstring injury. In my opinion, AJ's better. I watch AJ.
Oh,
it is like watching early 2000s Paul Pierce mixed and meshed with Tracy McGrady, who somehow also plays elite level defense and can shut down the opposing team's best player when he wants to. It's crazy, just the fluidity that he has to the game. Trevor mentioned the shot where he gets it at the top of, on the corner, and he pump fakes, and then he Euro steps and spins and gets the layup with his offhand. That play looks so simple because he's so good. That is such a hard and difficult play to make, and an incredibly difficult shot to make. And yet you watch that on Twitter or on YouTube or however you watch the highlights of these basketball games, and you think oh, that's not a difficult shot. That's, he pump faked, he got the defender to bite on it just enough to be able to make a move, get to the basket, and lay it up with his left hand. That's so hard. And AJ just made it look like you could go out and do it in your driveway. You could do that in your driveway without a defender, and you probably shoot 50%. And he just made it look like the most simple elementary school looking basketball move, because that's how good he is. That move right there, his fadeaway had Paul Pierce, Tracy McGrady written all over it. That play, his footwork was incredible. He had a lot of good. His footwork has been so good, especially when he gets it down, on the corner and on the block. And he's been called for travels that aren't travels. It's just, I think some of these college refs aren't used to seeing footwork like that at the college level. And so they just assume he's traveling. It's special to be able to watch AJ Debonsa. I think he's the best player in college basketball. I think he should be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. But, for the sake of the argument and to play devil's advocate, I think you're talking about Koa Pete, who's in Arizona, and Darren Peterson are the only two that are even in that conversation.
One of my favorite comments, I think we've all, when we're referencing the highlights, the Hunter's talking about, Bleacher Report put out, it was a minute 15 or whatever. One of my favorite comments underneath that post was a guy that was he's I watched these highlights 5 times and I can't tell you if he's a lefty or a righty.
He's just so smooth and fluid. You think that's how he's always done it. It's awesome. One underrated part of that play too, that if you watch it back, you'll notice, is Richie Saunders. First of all, Richie's spatial awareness on that play is 10 out of 10. He's there if AJ needs to kick it out, and he's at the center 3 in case Richie's defender collapses and he needs to be open for a 3. So his spacing there is incredible. When AJ first goes for the pump fake, Richie steps inside the 3-point line he's going to attack the rim to go for the rebound. Immediately, as soon as he notices, because Richie's defender starts to collapse as soon as Richie starts to go to the rim, thinking that he's going up for the rebound because AJ's going to put up a shot. As Richie's recognition of, no, AJ's pump faking, he's making a move to the rim, and to step back and remove himself back outside the 3-point line to pull his defender away from AJ to allow him to have that space to get to the rim, is one of the more underrated parts of that play, is just Richie having the awareness to know what AJ is going to do, to read his body language and his movements to allow that play to happen. Was incredible to watch as well. So obviously AJ's play was fantastic and one of the most impressive plays of the night. But if you watch that replay and you watch Richie kind of read AJ, was also super fun to watch.
Look at us, boys.
Bang.
It's
all
a football
knowers.
week. It's a football game week, and we just spent 30 minutes talking about BYU basketball. Let's go. Last thing I'll say, my biggest takeaway, I guess I had two big takeaways. One of them being, I'm going to take the opposite side of you, Hunter. I think that this is actually the worst that this BYU team is going to look. Like you said, like we saw a glimpse of like what the ceiling could be of this team. I feel like what I saw was the floor. Because this team still clearly has not figured out how to play offense together yet for 2 straight halves. Mm-hmm. To me, it still looks like you got 3 elite scorers at the college level, and they're just kind of taking turns with the basketball right now. We saw a little bit of that last year, early in the season. And Kevin Young like figured it out. Like they decided to make Yegor a little bit less of a scoring option. He became more of a facilitator, and it really unlocked Richie and the rest of the offense. The fact that, again, BYU played that poorly on offense against the number 4 team in the country for a half and shot 70% true shooting percentage in the second half, pretty much just playing ISO ball. That to me, that feels really encouraging for a team that is still playing only their 4th game. This core is only playing their 4th game together. And that's very, very encouraging for me.
Because you mentioned Yegor, we reminisce if we did not say how Yegor freaking was balling tonight. First half, 12 points, 4 for 4 from 3, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. Now the Nets ended up losing because they lose every single night. They're 2-12. But Yegor has been, I think, very impressive.
It is very unsurprising to me that his game translates to the NBA more than it did in college. Like he was very, very good in college. He's going to be amazing in the NBA.
He did end up going 0 for 3 in the second half from 3, but we're not going to count that. First half, Yegor
still shot about 50%.
If we can get first half Yegor shooting 4 for 4 from 3 to join BYU for their first half, knock down some threes until they start falling in the second half, I think we'll be good.
All right. Nate Slack was asking for more anger, so I'm going to give it to him. Guys, we do not hate the College Football Playoff Committee enough. I am going to read you this response from the CFP as to why Oregon is where they are. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We had significant discussion of the teams 7 through 10, quite candidly, all grouped there together, comparing Oregon, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and Alabama and their resumes of those teams. So
why not
right
7
off the
through
bat,
11?
So right off the bat, we understand why BYU's metrics like didn't earn them to the front of that group. It's because the committee just like didn't look at BYU's resume.
They didn't even
until
talk
the
about
books
them.
on that were closed. Oregon, while their strength of schedule metric may not be as strong as in Oklahoma, we felt that they're a very strong team on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. They rank in the top 10 in most statistical categories that we use in comparison to other teams. They had a really big win at Iowa 2 weeks ago. Iowa's ranked in our top 25 previously. They won at Penn State. I know Penn State is not the same team we expected them to be this year. Still a very challenging place to play, as evidenced by Indiana having a last-second touchdown win there a couple weeks ago. There is significant discussion about that, but Oregon at 9-1 just stayed 1 spot ahead of Oklahoma.
You know it's
Penn State. Hold on, Trevor.
Go ahead.
Penn State. Why is Oregon, like we went through all the metrics. Why is Oregon ranked ahead of BYU? Because they beat, what are they, 4-5 Penn State? 4-6? I don't even know what Penn State is. I don't even know who their quarterback is. They don't even know who their coach is. Can anyone name Penn State's interim coach? Okay. James Franklin got fired because he lost to Oregon in their own house, and then turned around the very next week and lost to Northwestern. Okay. This isn't a Penn State team that had unfortunate injuries, and that's why they fell off. They lost to Oregon at home, turned around the next week, still the number 5 team in the country, and lost to UCLA fully healthy. The corpse of UCLA, who, again, I can't even name the name of the blonde-haired offensive coordinator that they have. He was in his bag apparently for one day. Okay, so apparently we got to rank we got to rank UCLA up there with Oregon too. And then the next week, again, fully healthy, they lose to Northwestern. That is the Penn State that we are using to prop up Oregon. That is absurd.
Penn State, James Franklin was fired, did a Sports Center or a College Game Day ESPN interview, then did a cycle of interviews and was hired at a different school. And in that time frame, Penn State won one game. Between the firing of James Franklin, interviews, both with colleges and on ESPN Game Day, and then the announcement that he was hired at Virginia Tech, in that span, one victory for Penn State, and that came against 3-7 Michigan State.
Look, it's never good. Go ahead.
You put people like Mark Harlan on the committee, and all of a sudden we get ridiculous opinions like this. This, again, Mark Rhodes was taken off the committee for reasons that are obvious. Even he wouldn't come up with an opinion like this. Okay. This is some bullshit from, sorry for our sensitive audiences. This is some bull crap.
Nate wanted anger, and he got it.
Because literally Mark Harlan cannot stop caping for Pac-12 teams. Like, how much do we want to bet that Mark Harlan was like, we used to lose to Oregon back in the day. I really miss those days. Let's put Oregon up there just because I respect them so darn much. Like, again, it's my deepest fears. That comment confirms my deepest fears that all that matters to this committee is what happened at the time of the game. Nothing that has happened since the game. Well, that's not true because Notre Dame lost to Miami in week 1. Alabama lost to Florida State. So those teams evolve over time, but apparently Penn State doesn't. Like, Penn State is still the top 5 team in the country as far as Oregon is concerned. Like, that's what BYU is up against, is because they get all of their best wins, and then those wins age gracefully with time. And so they never get the credit. Like, same thing with SMU last year. They never got the credit because SMU turned it on after the BYU game.
What I don't get, there's another quote from the chairman who I disavow this Hunter, where he talks about that the reason that BYU is behind 2 lost teams, says, quote, "It's really the way they looked in that game against Texas Tech. They were dominated on both sides of the ball in that game against Texas Tech. Then you look at their wins. They have a win over Utah, who's ranked 13th. But then their other wins are against what we would consider quality wins, are against an unranked Iowa State team, Arizona, and East Carolina." The very next team that he mentions, then you look at 2-loss Alabama that's got wins against Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Tennessee. How did Alabama look against Florida State? Hunter, fake Hunter. Like, why is how BYU looked in their 1 loss against Texas Tech weighted so a road loss to a top 5 team is what's counted more heavily and weighed more heavily than Alabama and how they looked against Florida State? Because Alabama also was dominated on both sides of the ball by a terrible Florida State team. But because that was week 1, we don't count it. We don't remember it. Like, how do you, with a straight face, talk about, oh, well, BYU lost to Texas Tech and they got dominated. And then you look at Alabama, well, they beat Vanderbilt and Tennessee and Missouri.
Dominated on both sides of the ball. Did you watch? BYU's defense definitely, like, look, BYU's offense was terrible. All Kate for that 100%. BYU's defense looked like they belonged in that game.
Yes, 100%.
Like, they were put in disadvantageous positions all game long, and they held strong in the red zone and held Texas Tech to 3 points on almost every red zone trip. For that to be the excuse when, like, and to talk about, like, their best win is Utah at 13 as if that's like a negative, or to talk about how winning on the road at 7-3 Arizona or 7-4 Iowa State, like, that's somehow a negative.
I also don't like, and then he goes on, he talks about Notre Dame. He's like, well, Notre Dame, they have a win over 15th ranked Southern Cal. So worse win than beating Utah. So, like, you're
and in terms
saying
of
Notre
game
Dame's got.
those were the
He's saying
exact
Notre Dame's got this quality win against USC, which is a less quality than BYU's win over Utah, and then they have a dominating week against Pitt. But BYU's domination of TCU doesn't count. That's not a quality win. He mentioned Iowa State, Arizona, and East Carolina, so he didn't mention TCU, who BYU just dominated. And then he mentions 3 other quality wins for BYU and 1 other quality for Notre Dame. Because guess why? Notre Dame doesn't have another quality win. Their next quality win is against probably a 6-4 Boise State team that's in 3rd place in the Mountain West. It makes no sense. And there's no mention of the losses of these teams. He mentions that BYU is being punished for their loss to Texas Tech, but doesn't mention Notre Dame has 2 losses. He doesn't mention that Alabama got dominated by Florida State. He doesn't mention these other teams that BYU's behind because it doesn't serve the narrative.
I just don't love when a committee has to turn into like used car salesman. Like this whole thing is just them trying to sell everyone crap. Like, yeah, like look at this car. Yeah, it's been in a couple of accidents and it's missing a rear view mirror and, you know, this back tire gets deflated, but like, hear me out. Like they're selling us a lemon. And here's the thing too. If everything that BYU, like if everything that is resting on whether or not BYU can move up or not is how they look against Texas Tech, if they go into the conference championship game and they either win or they lose close, like Hunter or like Joe Use mentioned earlier, lose on like a game-winning field goal, then what, committee? Like, do we vault them all the way up to 5? Are you going to do that? Are you going to have them jump over Alabama, have them jump over Oregon, Notre Dame, all these guys? Because the one card that's holding this up apparently is BYU's lost to Texas Tech. I guarantee if they lose close, they're going to just say, well, they had 2 losses. And so you can't have it all rest on this one thing. And then if BYU fixes it, not obviously at this point, I'm making a straw man, but like, I just don't feel confident at all if they truly believe it's all because of Texas Tech that they're going to remedy it if BYU remedies it.
So here's what's frustrating to me is that, you know who else got absolutely just pantsed by Texas Tech on both sides of the ball? Utah. Exact same game. Like exact same game. Utah's offense was dominated for 3 quarters. The defense hung in there until the very, very end, and the dam broke a little bit. Utah's at what, 12? With their 2 losses, 1 to BYU. Like they look the exact same. That's not keeping Utah from being up there in playoff contention, that, you know, getting boat raced. The difference is that like
At
really
home.
all the committee and all the committee cares about is just point margin. Like it really just does come down to
not even that. They care about the logos on the side of the helmet, or in Notre Dame's case, the absence of the logo on the helmet. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. It's the patch, the conference patch on your jersey and the logo on the side of your helmet matter more to the College Football Playoff Committee than wins, losses, rankings, metrics, anything of that nature.
Obviously, but I think this is why it gets so frustrating when BYU gives up a late touchdown to a West Virginia or a late touchdown to Utah. Like that Utah win, the number of times I've heard, well, they only beat Utah by a field goal. Utah never had the ball with an opportunity to win that game. Like BYU was up 10 for almost the entire 4th quarter. That's what's so irritating to me is it's the lack of style points has really, really hurt BYU this year because the narrative was already set when you went to double overtime with Arizona. It doesn't matter that Arizona's good and that there was a torrential downpour or whatever. All the committee sees is that you were in a 2 overtime loss. You had a 2 overtime win against Arizona. Never mind that, you know, Texas A&M almost got pantsed by South Carolina this week. That didn't affect their ranking whatsoever, but sure.
How
was that?
There's an actual game to be played, though. Yeah, Nate, you got your wish. Game to be played, though.
So let's talk about Cincinnati and within the context of the playoff. If BYU goes in there and does to Cincinnati what they did to TCU, do you think that changes anything with the committee?
Not unless someone loses.
Because like I would hope so. Like road win, and that's the thing. I think Cincinnati had built up the reputation, even though they've dropped a couple games recently. They have the reputation of like, oh, this team is actually pretty good. If you can go in there and do that to Cincinnati, I would like to think that you can jump somebody. I don't know who that would be.
I think that Utah's win over Cincinnati, the way that they won that game, I think absolutely has changed the minds of a lot of playoff committee members.
Didn't help BYU at all for beating Utah, but whatever.
No, of course not. Trevor was on the Cincinnati Viva La Cats podcast earlier tonight, previewing the game.
Did you call them unserious like they called me?
Behind enemy lines. Is that an actual quote?
Yes, they posted the success rate chart from the game with Iowa State, and they said they called BYU deeply unserious. So
I thought they were great.
Trevor, give us the preview. What did you guys discuss on that show that you can present to our listeners, and what we need to know about Cincinnati?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, first and foremost, they both were at BYU's first Big 12 home opener against Cincinnati in 2023 and had nothing but glowing reviews of their time in Provo outside of obviously the game itself. One of the things that I've noticed right away is they're a lot so in the same boat as TCU fans were last week. Like TCU fans in their mentions were like, oh, like we're going to get smoked, or our coach, like they were very obviously like, get Sonny Dykes out of there. This is a little bit like they both were very, they felt like BYU was going to win. Felt like Cincinnati was good and they're happy with where they've been this season, especially compared to last season, but that there's a clear separation in the tiers of where BYU is at currently than where Cincinnati's at. My takeaway from Cincinnati, like watching the games, is this team is going to live and die by Brendan Sorsby. And you kind of hear coaches talk about not playing too high or too low. Brandon Sorsby, that's where he lives. He lives in kind of these extremes of like when he's playing high and the emotions are good and things are rolling, he's nearly unstoppable. But the second things start going the opposite direction, he's just kind of in the dregs, playing in the gutter. You saw it with Utah, like things fell apart really quickly. Same thing happened with Arizona. Like they looked okay in the first half and then the wheels came off in the second. It's BYU should and absolutely can win this game and win this game big. It's solely going to come down to just don't give this Cincinnati team any momentum. Come out the same way you did against TCU, punch them in the mouth early, take the crowd out of it, and go to work from there.
I kind of get the feeling that this is going to be harsh. I get the feeling that Cincinnati is a team that quits a little bit. Like, and I say that solely because of Sorsby's body language when things go wrong. Like, I see a lot of Josh Hoover in Brendan Sorsby, where like he's got a ton of talent, obviously, but the moment things started to spiral on Josh Hoover, he was just done. And I've seen that happen with Sorsby against really, really good defenses, like against Nebraska. So against like top 90 defenses this year, he's averaging something like 160 yards passing, 50% completion percentage, and a 1.3 to 0.8 touchdown to interception ratio. Against bottom 90 defenses, he's averaging like 315 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 70% completion. Like, he's a much different player based on the quality of competition that he's playing. But like against Nebraska, so against the best defenses he's played, Nebraska 13 of 25, 69 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Utah 11 of 33, 221 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Against Arizona 15 of 28, 154, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Like, if things start to spiral on this guy and he starts to get frustrated, I think he's the kind of player that will force the football into bad areas. So I think BYU's defense, like, they've done it to every quarterback they've played this year. Like, I think they can hold Sorsby in check. The question for me is, can BYU stop the run against what is probably a top 3 run offense in the Big 12? If you do, I don't think Cincinnati's going to be able to stop BYU on offense. Like, they're something like 70th in success rate. Like, this defense is very similar to the TCU defense and the Iowa State defense, frankly, that BYU absolutely torched on offense all game long.
Well, and one of the things that jumps out about the Cincinnati's defense is they don't force a lot of turnovers. So not only are they not very successful, they're not making up for it by creating turnovers. I think up to this point in the season, they've forced like 4 interceptions and they've recovered like 2 fumbles or something like that. Like BYU has almost tripled their turnovers on defense. They run like it's like a majority 3-3-5, which the fans over there, at least from what I've seen, are not a huge fan of because they have a hard time stopping the run, which leads obviously to some of that success rate stuff. So one thing we didn't mention about TCU was I was very pleased with how healthy LJ Martin looked. So if he's good to go, the offense is able to get a good push. Like we've talked about this like all season. This is not a team. This, like, Bear is not a quarterback that puts the ball in harm's way. And then this isn't a defense on top of that is all that opportunistic either. So if BYU can just stay out of their own way and stay on the field and go and score points, then Joe, like you mentioned, like, you're putting Sorsby in these positions where he has to take risks. The two picks that he threw against Arizona were both from the safeties, and it was just lobbing a ball up into what he assumed was just one-on-one coverage, and then the safety came over the top and picked him off, a la Tanner Wall or Satuala or some of these guys. So put him in awkward situations and then let the offense and defense feast from there.
I probably make it sound like I don't think Cincinnati's very good. I think they are very good. I just think BYU is better. Like, I think BYU's strengths, I guess I think Cincinnati is a very similar team to TCU. Like, probably better than their record shows. Really, really close to being a 1-loss team at this stage. But I just think BYU's better. Like, BYU's offense, again, like, unless you have a defensive line that can get home with 4 guys, BYU's offense is going to move the ball on you really, really well. On the other hand, like, I expect Cincinnati to drive the football in BYU pretty well, but none of that really matters if you don't score touchdowns in the red zone, and BYU just doesn't allow touchdowns in the red zone. So for those reasons, like, I think this will be a close game for a while, but I don't know that Cincinnati can keep up if they can't stop BYU's offense, which they couldn't stop Noah Fifita last week or Utah the week before.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. Like, Cincinnati is a good team. BYU is just a better team. What's your nerve level?
Like a 2. Like, I'm nervous. I'm nervous because it's a big game. Like, this has all the makings of the Arizona State game last year. But Arizona
State was playing for championship.
They're playing for their lives. Like this just
Cincinnati's been playing for their lives the last 2 weeks, and they've, both have been losses. So Cincinnati to me feels like a team that is a good team that beats other decent to slightly above decent teams, and then when they play a good to great team like a Utah, Arizona, BYU, it's just you see where that line is drawn in the sand of what separates a Cincinnati from a Utah or a BYU.
I kind of think that they're almost like a 2024 BYU in a way, but instead of winning your early season out of conference game, you lost it. Like they're sitting here at 5-2 in the Big 12. It just feels like a team that is still new to winning at the P4 level. And so it's going to take them a year before they fully figure that out, just like BYU had to figure it out. And I think they learned a lot from that, where I think TCU is kind of still in that same boat that BYU was last year.
So with that said, score predictions and hot takes.
I'm going to go 30. Yes. As always, if you want to look hot, Odeon Menswear, look good, feel good, so you can do good in the best moments of your life. Said it all the time. Love our suits that we've gotten from them. 15% off on your purchase using the code HypeTrain15. So with that said, I think BYU wins this 31-21. I
don't think that gets it done for the committee.
I mean, you got to hope it does, because it's on the road. Like if you're comparing this to the BYU Utah or the Cincinnati Utah game, it's not a fair comparison. But I don't know. I think BYU is good enough to beat Cincinnati 45-14. I'll tell you that. But I think Cincinnati is also really good. So I'm just going to go 10-point margin.
Fair enough.
I'm going to say
your hot take.
My hot take is BYU goes for 500 yards of offense.
That'd be fun.
Subscribe.
I'm going to say 34-20. And let's see. BYU defensive line has 4 sacks.
I mean, this is a good Cincinnati offensive line. So that would be.
It was a good Iowa State offensive line. It was a good Utah offensive line too. Good Texas Tech offensive line.
I'm going to say BYU 34-14. And I'm going to say this is a selfish hot take prediction because I need it. Evan Johnson 2 picks.
There you go.
He got off to a scorching start, and then people stopped throwing his direction. So I need Braden Sorsby to start to force some things down by 3 scores in the second half, and I need Evan Johnson to come away with 2 picks. But
fun times, man. I
had this debate today, and really quick before we get out of here, I was talking to people at work, and I said, you know what? I've decided that I'm not going to let the outcome of like Alabama, Auburn dictate my enjoyment of BYU games. Like ultimately, the season is not a failure or a success because of the opinions and the politics that go behind closed doors in a room full of old white guys that we call the playoff committee. And this may sound like preemptive loser talk, but it might be, but it's not. That regardless of what happens these next couple of weeks for BYU, as long as they are going out and handling business and winning football games, like I'm not going to worry about all the extracurricular stuff. And I know we spent probably like 40 minutes talking today about the extracurricular stuff that doesn't happen between the lines of the BYU football field. But for myself and hopefully BYU fans as well, for these next 2 regular season football games, in Cincinnati, and then in Provo against UCF. Like, don't let these other outcomes, like the USC Oregon game, like the outcome of that game, I'm not going to let that impact my enjoyment level of BYU Cincinnati. And so hopefully BYU fans can get behind that and do a similar thing where let's just go out and enjoy the heck out of this BYU football season. I think over the summer, we had lost who we thought to be our starting quarterback. There was questions on if BYU in 2024 was fool's gold or if they were legit. And this year has been freaking awesome. Like, we do not get seasons like this very often, or at least we haven't very often over the last, 10 plus years. Hopefully they become a little more consistent over these next 10 plus years. But, like, we can be mad at the committee. We are mad at the committee. We've vocalized why we're mad at the committee. But ultimately, like, BYU's going out and these guys are winning games at an incredibly high level. And we every single week except for one in the year that is 2025, dating back to January. And, we should be able to enjoy each of those wins, no matter what happens on the East Coast or in the SEC or the Big Ten or whatever it may be. So hopefully BYU fans and the players as well, because I think the same can be said for them. You don't want to start to let all the noise and the extracurriculars start to impact your play. But as a fan, I don't want it to impact my fandom and the way that I enjoy this season, because this team deserves for us as the fans to have enjoyed what they've done.
Yeah. I love it. Probably one of my biggest regrets last season was allowing the outcome of the Iowa State-Kansas State game to just ruin and completely sour my mood for the BYU senior night.
I'll hate Avery Johnson till the day I die because of that game.
But, like, you're right. Like, BYU had an incredible season last year, and they're doing it again. And we control what we can control. So, well said, Hunter.
Like, I do take a second and think about it all the time that, like, we really are living in the good old days of BYU athletics right now. Like, this is what it felt like to live in the 80s. Like, as someone like me just turned 30, like, I didn't get to live this. But this is exactly what the 80s were like. Like, every year you enter the season, you expect to beat pretty much every team that's on your schedule. You do beat pretty much every team that's on your schedule, and you end the season unbelievably frustrated at the lack of respect that your program is getting. But I'm with you, Hunter. Like, you can't let the opinions of other people prevent you from living in what is, to be honest, like, if BYU ends the season the way that we think they can, BYU is like, BYU could go 11-1 against the third toughest schedule they've ever played in program history. Other one being 2004 and the 1923. We all remember that year as the toughest schedules in BYU history, and BYU could realistically win 11 games. Like, that is unbelievable.
If they do what we expect them to do over the next 2 weeks, I think there's no doubt about it. We talk about this team as one of the greatest BYU teams.
1,000%. 1,000%.
And so I think we need to view it as such and remember it as such, regardless of what the athletic directors for Alabama and Auburn and Ole Miss and LSU have to say about it. So that's my challenge to myself. And then hopefully BYU fans can get behind that sort of mentality. And on top of that, as if that wasn't enough already, as soon as the football season ends, we just go right to watching what could be one of the greatest BYU basketball teams of all time. So if BYU makes it to the conference championship game in the Big 12, you always know it's Cougs by 1 billion. So that playoff spot is going to be ours anyway.
Oh, yeah. It's big noon kickoff on Saturday. So that's cool. That, because
we didn't even talk about, like, the national
it's an look, man, it's an expectation at this point. BYU has been the main character of a national college football pregame show 5 times this season, 3 times when BYU plays in it and twice the times that Utah hosted it. And that's the best compliment I can give. Go Cougs.
Cougs by 1 billion.